Welcome back, bow hunters. This is Ron with Stay Sharp Guide. If you followed my channel, you know that I have done the sharpening video for the full QAD blades, but I get a lot of questions about the swept, and that's what we're going to do in this sharpening video. This is a new package. We will look at them under the microscope. We'll put them in the sharpness meter, and then we'll set about a strategy for sharpening, selecting the right guide, and a description or a demonstration on how to sharpen them. I've always been impressed with this head. I've been recommending it for a long time. I like heads that are all steel, no small screws, and this one is certainly a great choice. And there are a lot of people who like the swept blade, if it's legal in your state, versus the full blade. The full blade offers more holding material on the blade in our jaws. The swept blade leaves a lot more unsupported material out on the edge, so you've got to use super light pressure. But I get enough comments or questions asking, when are you going to do a video about these swept blades? So that's what we're going to do today. So let's look at it under the microscope and in the sharpness tester. That edge looked very good under the microscope, as expected. Now the blades are very small, difficult to hold. I couldn't put the blade while it was on the broadhead into the groove where the filament is, because the other blades were hindering my pressing down. So I put it in the vice grips, and let's see what we get for an out-of-the-box score. $197. So that is sharp. It's out of the box, new. And my classification for a hunt ready broadhead is a score of 200 or less, and this falls into that. But this is a nice thick blade, and it is reusable. So resharpening it is obviously an option, and we're going to look at sharpening methods next. While the full blade can be sharpened in the replaceable blade guide, the black replaceable blade guide, the swept blade, I would recommend the gray guide. Now it's just a little bit steeper, but as you can see, there is not a lot of blade to hold on to here. So you can see what is in the guide is just a very tiny amount. It doesn't have the luxury of all the metal that a full blade has. So the gray guide is going to be a little bit steeper than factory, but it's going to produce a slightly steeper but stronger edge than factory. So let's see if we've got our parallelism correct here. So we're going to color up the blade, and by parallelism I mean, is this cutting edge parallel to the roller? So if this blade were in the guide like this, obviously it's only going to sharpen this edge. Conversely, if it was like this, it would only sharpen the tail edge. You want the cutting edge parallel to the roller. So we'll give it a couple of strokes on a very fine grit plate like 2000 or 1200, and then we'll look at our wear. There. So like I said, we're seeing a little bit steeper angle, but if you looked at their blade has a secondary grind angle. There's the primary, there's the secondary. You can see the two difference. So we're going to be sharpening just that white line, that secondary angle, without touching this primary big bevel. So it's going to be the gray guide that we're going to be using, and this is your placement Now with so little bit of the blade in here, you can't push down hard, and you shouldn't be anyway. Regardless if you're using our diamond plates or our silicone carbide. Now, I contend these blades are small enough and soft enough that the 10 pack of the silicone carbide paper is a great option for such a tiny blade, and it's not super hard steel. If you don't want to spend nearly $70 on a 5-plate pack of diamonds, I think it's like $11.50 for 10 sheets of the silicone carbide paper. You get 2 sheets of each grit. Your choice. We offer both options. So for this video, I'm going to use the diamond plates. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to get everything set up, and we're going to come back and we're going to start sharpening, and we're going to start at 240 grit. So stay tuned. When sharpening, you always want to start at 240 grit. The fastest burr is your coarsest grit, and 240 grit is your quickest way to get your first burr. Your first burr is your foundation for success. If you don't get a burr at 240, you're going to struggle with every other grit. So let's start there. So we're going to do a couple of strokes and test for a burr. Again, light pressure. Now, I'm going to move the plate in every single direction possible. If you watch our video, Diamond Plate Usage, Selection, Care, and Cleaning, I cover how to get the most out of your plate, especially cleaning. And don't just roll down the center. You'll wear out the middle, the edges will be just fine. Roll diagonal. You can roll the short way, especially with small blades like this. So now we haven't spent much time, but I'm going to look to see if we've achieved a burr yet. And a burr is easily tested with a piece of Post-it note or paper that's about 1/4 inch wide. You don't want a piece that's as wide as the whole blade, because maybe you do have a burr here, but you don't have it here. You want to jab and test it along the entire edge. So let's see what we've got. Nope. So it's sliding right off. This tells me we have not achieved a burr yet. So we're going to keep going. All right, so now we're going to look again to see if we've achieved a burr. We're starting to. So out on this edge, I have achieved a burr. The paper is hooking, and if you don't know what a burr is, I'm going to inset a picture here showing you what a burr looks like. So I've got a little bit more here that doesn't have a burr, so I'm going to keep going. We'll test it again now. Yes, so the paper is hooking all along the entire edge. Now that didn't take very long. If you just said, I'm going to start out at 800 or 1200 grit, you would have spent a lot more time trying to get your first burr. Don't do that. Do it at 240 and you'll be a lot quicker. So now that we've got a burr on this side, we have to break that burr off on the other side and get a new burr. So it's 2 burrs per grit. Sharpen one side, get a burr. Flip it over, sharpen the other side. Now you'll create a new 240 grit burr. Alright, so now we're going to test this side. So we erased the burr to begin with, and we should hopefully form a new one. The paper is hooking. It's hooking. I don't, yeah I do. Yeah, I've got a burr all along the entire edge. So now I've got a 240 grit burr on one side. I'm going to flip it. Break off that 240 grit burr on this side. Flip it. So I'm getting rid of that 240 grit burr. Now the next step is going to be 400 grit. But I don't want to just immediately start sharpening. I want to blow off and wipe off this guide and get rid of all of any loose 240 grit diamond granules that may have come off this plate. I don't want to contaminate a 400 grit plate with any 240 particles. So let's do it again now at 240. Same thing. Let's see if we've got a 400 grit burr now. Yes. We are hooking on a 400 grit burr. Not as much on the tail end, so I'll give it a couple more strokes. Now let's look at our burr formation. Yes, we have a burr out on the tail all the way. So now we can flip it. We start by breaking off that burr, and now we're going to sharpen this side with 240 and create a second burr. Two sides, two burrs. Explore all of that plate. You paid for all of it, use all of it. All right, now let's see if we have a second burr at 400. Yes, yes. All right, so now I'm going to take that and flip. So we're creating burrs, we're breaking off burrs before we jump to the next plate, which in this case is 800. Now I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to do it at 800. I'm going to do it at 1200, and I'm going to do it at 2000. You get the gist. You don't have to watch me do every grit. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about the final burr and buffing. So stay tuned. Okay, I've gone through all the grits all the way up to 2000. Now, I should say that if you use our silicone carbide paper, make sure that you have a backing of an old piece of window glass, an old piece of mirror, a piece of plexiglass, maybe a granite or marble countertop, something that doesn't allow the paper to yield or flex. These are metal, so they won't yield or flex. The other thing, if you do use our diamond plates, again, I mentioned watching the diamond usage, care, and cleaning. But here's kind of a spoiler alert. If you want to clean them really effectively, blue painter's tape or freezer tape pressed deeply into the cracks, and then you peel it right back on itself, and you'll see what's coming up here. Peel nice and slow, and what was trapped in the plate is now trapped in the tape. You'll get more utility out of your diamond plates if you use that method. Okay, so now that we've got our blade sharpened all the way up to 2000 grit, burrs removed, I can feel it's getting nice and sharp. We're gonna move on to the buffing stage next, so stay tuned. If you've spent any time watching any of my videos, you know that I am an advocate for cereal box cardboard. Cut the box apart. You'll have a large front and a large rear panel. Use the unprinted side. We offer buffing compound. Cover the cardboard with the buffing compound. This is just a wax substrate with a fine abrasive in it. You don't need leather. This could be leather, this could be cardboard, this could be a piece of soft wood. This could be denim stretched over a piece of wood. All this is a carrier or a vehicle for the buffing compound. When you buff, only buff with a backward motion. And this you can do as much as you want. You're not really removing material as much as you are getting rid of that little jagged edge that was created by the final grit, in this case 2000. Now, under a microscope, it looks like a saw edge. But to you and your naked eye, it doesn't look very rough at all. But the buffing compound turns that edge into a mirror, and it gets rid of all those tiny serrations. So do one side, flip it, do it the other side, and like I said, you can't overdo it. Do it as much as you'd like. The more of this that you do, the sharper your head gets. This is why barbers would strop on a piece of leather. That's all they had back then. But this is why they strop to make a razor blade out of a piece of metal. It's this buffing that takes you from sharp to scary sharp. So I'm going to do a bunch of this, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go back under the microscope and into the sharpness meter to see what the effects are of what we've done on the blade so far. But here's what we're looking like so far. So I'm going to keep going, and then we'll come back. Our edge looked very good under the microscope. So now we're going to see what the sharpness meter tells us we got for an edge. So let's look right now. $98. We're under 100. So hunt ready, in my opinion, is 200. We got an edge of 100. So if you send this blade through an animal and your blades aren't damaged, bent, they can definitely be resharpened and brought back to an incredible edge. Let's take this out of here. So this is the factory, or the sharpened edge or blade. This is the factory blade. So no weight will be lost. The scale won't even, my grain scale won't pick it up. It'll be less than a half of a grain as far as what was taken off. The profile wasn't changed. And that became incredibly sharp. There we go, using the Stay Sharp gray guide. Thanks for watching.